A good listener is a talker with a sore throat. And if you want to know how your girlfriend will treat you after marriage, watch or listen how she talks to her little brother. Sorry. And D.L. Moody said this. He said, the difference between listening to a radio sermon and going to church is like calling your girlfriend on the phone or spending an evening with her. And so that's why I'm glad you're all here rather than just listening to me on the radio or on YouTube. Because when you're together, when we're together, we get to experience something special. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to experience something special. You wouldn't have seen this balloon go up on YouTube, would you? Unless they recorded it. No? It said no. Okay. So have you ever talked to somebody or had a conversation with somebody and you're in the middle of the conversation and you realize you can't remember what they were just saying? Of course. And you know what the person's next phrase or next response will be to you? Well, maybe you weren't listening. You know, you're probably right. I probably wasn't. Because I was probably thinking of what I wanted to say while you were talking. Don't you do that all the time? Of course you do. What happens is that we have to learn how to practice active listening, not only with people, but with God. And you know what the difference between active listening and other forms of listening are? Active listening involves doing something that demonstrates that you're listening, that you understand what's being said. If you're following along in your bulletin guide, I encourage you to fill in these blanks, because these will be useful helps to you in the coming weeks as you're trying to listen to God and you're trying to hone your skills. I'm going to be sharing some things that are not going to be on this that you might even want to write notes on the back of that piece of paper, because they are very, very valuable for listening skills. So active listening involves giving verbal and nonverbal cues to show that you're paying attention, such as nodding. You ever notice I say, now this means yes, nodding? Because I want to know that you're listening to me, okay? And if you're doing this, you're not listening. And so I really want to make sure you're listening. So nodding is a way of listening. And sometimes if I'm making a point, you can all go, oh yeah, Pastor, I get it. Nod once in a while, and I'll feel like I'm really being heard. It can mean making eye contact. It can mean just even reflecting back. Like when you're talking to somebody and sometimes they'll say something back to let you know that they've heard you. In churches, a lot of times people say amen. I'm not telling you how to do that, but when you really make a good point, there's a solid point, and everybody goes, ooh. If you say something like, oh yeah, or amen, that means that you heard. I'm not telling you how to do that, but that's a lot of churches, they do that because they're giving back, they're reflecting back to their pastor what they're hearing. Well, the same thing when you're talking to somebody, when you give them reflecting comments like, oh yeah, I hear you, I understand. What I say a lot of times when in a conversation with somebody is, really? I mean, that's how I reflect back. So when they're talking to me and they're saying something that's interesting, they say, really? If you might hear me say that a lot when I'm in conversation, because I'm trying to reflect back to you what I'm hearing, and I'm trying to let you know that I'm hearing you. Now, non-active, or what we call passive listening, often means that we aren't truly engaged in the conversation. And we say things like this: yes, dear. Yes, dear. Yes, dear. And so, if you say that, your spouse should probably say, what did I just say? And you're going to be embarrassed, I'm sure. That's pretending you're listening. And it's not the same. All it does is communicate that you really don't care about what the person's saying. Or maybe you don't even care about them. So I wonder, do you all want to improve your listening skills both to people and to God?
Yes.
That's reflecting. All right, good job. You're getting the hang of it. Good. Well, actually, there's one more thing I want to share. You can't love unless you're willing to listen. And if you want to love the person you're with, you've got to learn to listen to them. Listening is probably the most important thing you can do to love somebody. It's giving somebody attention. I'm going to talk about, I'm going to give you some specific skills, and here's your next point. Our skills at listening to people also apply to listening to God. So the things I'm going to share with you today don't just apply apply to how you can talk to people and listen to people and love people better, but they also apply to how you can listen to God and love God more. And so they're applicable in both realms, both spiritually as well as physically. In fact, the Bible tells you that you don't love your brother, you don't love God unless you love your brother. So learning to listen to people around you shows them that you care. And that's what I want to help you learn today. And so here's a couple steps. Number one, stop what you're doing and focus 100% on the person that you're with. If the TV's on, don't just hit the pause button or the mute button, because you know what will happen? That's what's going to happen. You're going to keep on watching the TV or listening to it or keep wishing you could unpause it. Oh, we're getting some laughs here. Somebody must have got an elbow on the side. But when all you do is pause it or mute it, it's still there. It's still a distraction. Your heart is still in it. Your heart's not in the conversation. So what I'm asking you to do is, when somebody wants to talk, when your spouse or somebody else is there to talk, get rid of the distractions. Turn them off. Give them your entire attention. Sit down next to the person rather than right across the room. Or, if I'm going to get more points in that. But get comfortable. So if you're on a ladder, you're painting, and your wife comes out or wants to talk to you, don't keep painting. Get down on the ground, put it away, stop, just take a few minutes and listen. Because that's how you communicate love. And listen. And then you can always resume what you're doing when you're done with the conversation. But if you're uncomfortable, you're going to want to keep doing what you're doing. You're not going to want to give that person 100% of your attention. Remove any physical barriers between you and the person that you're talking to. For example, sit down with them. Focus completely on what the person's saying. Don't do or think about anything else. In other words, don't think about what you're going to say next. Don't think about what you could be doing instead of talking to this person. Focus on them. And then mentally make notes of what they're saying. When I have lunch with people, I try to have lunch with people from the congregation from time to time, and I sit down and I try to hone in on what they're saying and ask questions. But one of the things I try to do is I try to make mental notes because I want to remember these details about a person, one-on-one with them. I want to remember details about them so that I can, know how to minister to them and know things about them that I'll never forget. And it requires not just listening, it requires actually making those notes that you never forget them. Store them, intentionally store them, saying, oh, that's an important thing. I need to remember that about them. When you're talking to somebody, make those mental notes. Say, that's an important fact about their life. Well, that's such an interesting point about their life. I never want to forget that because that's really a key to their heart. All right? Listen not only to the words that they're saying, but the emotion that they're saying it with. Guys, I know this is tough because we tend to focus on externals and actions, but when a woman speaks with emotion, they're telling you their heart is being exposed. Guys, we tend to converse with our heads. Women converse with their hearts. And learning how to listen to somebody's heart and not just their head is a real important thing. So if you want your marriage to really grow and prosper, listen to the heart, not just the words. Listen to the emotions behind it. Then don't interrupt, because it shuts down communication. I have a habit of thinking I know what my wife is going to say. She's going to nod. And I think I know what she's going to say, and so she'll say 3 words, and I'll think, I've already done that. That's not what I was talking about. Oh, really? Okay. Take a deep breath. Listen instead of assume. And that's what I have to learn how to do myself. And then repeat back to the person what they've said to you. So in other words, what I'm hearing you say is, repeat back what you just heard them say. What I'm hearing you say, and my wife's a counselor, so she does this a lot. She says, what I'm hearing you say is that you're troubled by this, or this is really bothering you. And yeah, that's right. And they know that you're hearing them. You're actually listening to what they're saying. So I wonder, do you think these would work with God? Huh? Do you think they'd work with God? As well as, of course they would. Your quiet time with God really involves giving Him your undivided attention, focusing, making mental notes, or physical notes like journaling, or even repeating His word back to Him. notice, I don't know if you ever read, if you've read through Moses, what the story of Moses or the story of David, but David and Moses did this a lot in their conversation with God. Moses would say, but God, didn't you say? And David would repeat back to God his own words from the Psalms. He'd say, God, you promised that this and this and this. So basically what you're doing is you are repeating back to God what he's already said to you. In other words, you're telling him that you've heard him. And that's what repeating it back does. God only gave us one mouth and he gave us 2 ears for a reason. He wants us to listen twice as much as we talk. And so when we're in prayer, sometimes prayer, we tend to think of prayer as where we just tell God everything we need. And then we say, thanks God, talk to you later. Instead of quieting our heart and listening for his response. And so what I like to do, I like to turn Christian music on, worship music on, and in the morning and I just sit there quietly. Sometimes I fall asleep, it's okay, it's not a big thing. But I'll try to spend at least 10 to 30 minutes listening to God and praying and hearing him back as I'm spending that time quiet before him. That's a good way to listen to him. Just to hear him. Don't do it at night. Night is tough, at least for me it's even tough because I'm going to sleep like this. Once I lay down, I'm out. But in the mornings, a lot of times you're a little more attentive and just quiet your heart. Turn out all the distractions and focus on him and listen to what he has to say to you. Okay. Now, listening is a skill most of us have to learn. We have to discipline ourselves to listen and to hear what somebody's saying. And I believe that listening is a key to success in life. Dale Carnegie said that if you will make more friends in 2 weeks by becoming a good listener than you can in 2 years trying to get people interested in you. If you will listen to people, people will want to be around you. If all you do is this, guess what other people do? They'll try to give you space because they want to be heard too. The wise person is eager to hear what other people say, especially those who are more experienced who live godly lives. So this morning I have 2 passages from the Bible that I want to share with you, and they both apply to this message very clearly. The first one comes from the book of Hebrews in the 3rd chapter, where the author is warning Christians not to repeat the mistakes the Israelites made. It comes from Hebrews chapter 3, verse 15. But never forget this morning, today you must, hear the word here, listen to his voice. Don't harden your hearts against him as Israel did when they rebelled. We're going to break that down in a moment, but I'm going to give you the second verse as well. It comes from the book of James, the New Testament. James is an action person, and his entire letter is about the difference between belief and actually doing what you believe. Or saying you believe and actually doing what you believe. And so here is what he says in James 1:22. And remember, it is a message to obey, not just to listen to. If you don't obey, you're only fooling yourself. For if you just listen and don't obey, it's like looking at your face in the mirror, but doing nothing to improve your appearance. You see yourself, walk away, and forget what you look like. But if you keep looking steadily into God's perfect love, God's perfect law, the law that sets you free, and if you do what it says and don't forget what you heard, then God will bless you for doing it. So James is making it clear, if we don't act on what we hear God talking to us about, we're going to struggle. If you do what you say, you'll be blessed for it. Makes that perfectly clear. So you like to be blessed? Everybody here like to be blessed? You like God to bless you, to show you his favor. That's what it means to be blessed. To have his favor shown to you. I'd love to have favor, right? Yes. Okay, you give me that feedback. Yes, I want his favor. So obey what he says. Listen to what he says and then obey what he says, and you will be blessed. You will have his favor. So we've been talking about for several weeks about hearing God. We've established that God has spoken, is speaking, and continually speaks. He never stops talking. He never stops communicating with us, with his people. He's a relational God who's about having a relationship that includes two-way communication with his people. So are you one of his people? Are you one of his children? If you are one of his children, if you are a child of God, then you have the capacity to hear him. Last week we talked about that my sheep know my voice. Jesus says that if you are a sheep, you will know his voice. You will recognize it. If you're his sheep, you will know his voice. You will hear him speak to you. But our first passage from Hebrews said about the people of God, it said, if you must listen to his voice. Don't harden your heart towards him. So let me just ask, just to bring up this point. What does it mean to harden your hearts? I have the answer. It's going to show up on the screen. Hardening one's heart is what happens when our hearts, that's our mind, our will, and our emotion, become unpliable, unresponsive, and unfeeling towards the voice of God or the things of God. So when God does stuff around us, we just don't notice or don't care. That's a hard heart. Or somebody's in need and we just walk by because our hearts have lost their sensitivity because they've gotten hard, callous. You guys who are farmers, you probably have some calluses on your hands by about this time of the year, am I right? Yeah, I shake your hand, I can feel your calluses. I know you've been working hard, you've not been wearing gloves. You know, calluses protect us, but they also make it so we can't feel very much. And I can tell you, I have a couple calluses on my finger, my hands, that I can poke a pin in and not feel a thing because the callus is so thick. Well, that's what a callus does. A calloused, hardened heart can't feel and can't respond to God. So what do you got to do? Well, let me talk first about how that heart gets there. It comes a lot of times by sin or disappointment or hurt feelings or missed expectations or even obsessions with things from this world. And we've lost that love of God. Maybe you've met somebody who through difficult times, they've become very, very hard towards society or the people. You can just tell it. You just tell that hardness. You know, they just have that insensitivity. They feel callous when you talk to them. And you wonder how they got that way. And it's real hard to talk to them. Well, something in their life, some events, something happened in their life that caused them to wall off their heart. And they may have been hurt, maybe they haven't forgiven, maybe they've been disappointed, maybe they suffered a loss, they can't stop grieving. But I wonder if any of us might be in that place today. Your life has been tough. You don't always feel like you've been dealt a fair hand. Or you feel like somebody has done something to you and keeps on doing it to you, and you just can't get over the way you've been treated. And so you have some resentment, maybe some anger, maybe some disappointment, and your heart has actually grown closed off to God as a consequence. Well, there is good news. A hard heart, just like the hardening of your arteries, is reversible. A stent and bypass operation won't soften your spiritual heart, though. But a humbling or acknowledgement of your need and of your brokenness or of your hurt will. The prophet Ezekiel 36:26, God says, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. In the ISV it's rendered, I'm going to give you a new heart and I'm going to give you a new spirit within all of your deepest parts. I'll remove that rock-hardened heart of yours and replace it with one that is sensitive to me. That's what we can do. When you can recognize that your heart has grown hard towards the things of God, when you become insensitive towards God, then all it requires is that you humble yourself and acknowledge it. You say, God, I don't like being this way anymore. I don't like not being able to hear your voice. I don't like being obsessed with things of the world because I'm no longer close to you. You acknowledge what is going on in your life, and that's called repenting. It's confessing your sin and repenting of it. You say, God, I don't want to remain this way. And God does something amazingly gracious. He comes in and he replaces that hard heart with a soft one. You can actually start to feel again. You can actually begin to experience love again. You can experience forgiveness and joy again. You can experience life again. And if you've gone to that place where your heart has gotten hard and you're tired of it, today's a good day to change that. By acknowledging the hardness that's inside you and allowing God to soften you. So I encourage you to do that today. Now, James, I'm going to read the passage one more time. But James says, remember, it's a message to obey, not just listen to. If you don't obey, you're only fooling yourself. And if you listen and don't obey, it's like looking at your face in the mirror and doing nothing to improve your appearance. You see yourself and walk away and forget what you look like. It's his way of saying, if you're listening, prove it by your actions. Now, most of you got up this morning and looked in the mirror, combed your hair, right? Washed your face, took a shower, whatever. You looked in the mirror and you made sure that you looked okay before you walked out. But can you imagine if you had a big bunch of mascara running, ladies, I'm sorry, a big bunch of mascara running down the side of your face, and you saw it, so I need to fix that. And you walk out of the house, and you didn't do it because you forgot it was there. And you come to church, and everybody goes, they're all looking at you funny. You say, what's wrong with them? And you walk to the ladies' restroom, and you see yourself in the mirror, and you go, oh my goodness. You know, that's the feeling. That's what he's describing. Is when we have a hard heart, it's like looking in a mirror, and we forget what we look like, and we go back out into public, and everybody's looking at us funny, and we don't know why, because we've forgotten that we're all messed up inside. And we'll only learn to listen and obey. I have a lot of people that ask me, how can I know God's will for my life? And after having a conversation with them about the direction of their lives and the movement of God and how they're hearing God, I generally uncover something very disturbing. Many Christians are seeking the big picture instead of the daily obedience of their life. So a 17-year-old will come to me and say, I want you to help me pray for a wife because I want a wife. Or a 25-year-old. They're single. They think they're desperate. They say, I got to pray for a wife, or I got to pray for a job. I don't want to ask them, what are you doing on a daily basis about obedience to God? How are you obeying God in the little things? Because if you're looking for the big stuff to happen, you're not going to see it until you get the little stuff in order. And so if you're looking for the will of God in your life, start looking at the will of God in all the details. Once you get the details filled, it's kind of like painting a picture. My wife just took a class of painting with pastels, and she brought home these partially finished things, and you can just begin to see what they are. But she had to start working on those details. She's filling in all that white space with stuff, and it's just starting to resemble something. But unless you pay attention to the details, you'll never get the big picture. That's what James is telling us, to obey God in all the stuff, in all the little things that he's telling us to do in our lives. Learn how to pray. Learn how to read the Bible. Learn how to listen to God. Learn how to serve others. Learn how to give away your life. Learn how to be a generous person. Learn how to do those things. Learn how to love others. And when you do, your life will begin to fall into place. And you'll be walking along, and suddenly all those dreams that you had start happening to you because you're fulfilling and obeying God in all the little stuff. It's kind of like that balloon traveling on that string. I mean, if you've got the guidance of God's Word and obedience going on in your life, you're going to get to your destination and you're going to be fulfilled. But if you're trying to do it on your own, you're not obeying God, you're not listening to God, you're ignoring Him, guess what? You're just going to go around in circles. Jesus said, to him who has will more be given, but to him who has not, even what he has will be taken away. If you aren't willing to obey the little things, forget about the big stuff. We can't expect fresh revelation from God unless we obey the existing, what we've got already, our existing revelation. If you want to hear God and you're not hearing God, ask yourself if there's something in my past, somewhere along the line, that I haven't obeyed. There's something I've been disobedient about. Get it into line, get it in the Word, and watch how God starts lining your life up. I've had more than a few conversations with young adults. I had a young man come to me and say that he wanted to find, he was desperate to find a wife. And I told him, well, you need to do what I just shared with you all. And instead, what he decided he was going to do was going to help God out and start going to singles bars. And he told me before, he told me when we met, I want to meet a godly wife who'll go to church with me. Well, you know what? You marry somebody from a bar, your chance of finding a Christian is about that big. maybe even smaller than that. And you marry them, and then you wonder why they don't go to church with you. Because they never were a follower of Christ in the first place. They never shared your values and your beliefs and the vision that you had for your life. So obey God in the little things and learn to wait on Him. Don't compromise at all. Don't refuse to compromise. Just learn how to obey Him and watch how He begins to unfold your life. I have teenagers that come to me and ask me, they go to a conference like Choir of the Fire, and they talk about this. They send these kids on a mission trip. The kids all get really excited. The kids in my last church got really excited. They came back and said, Pastor, I believe God wants me to go on this mission trip for 2 weeks and wants the church to pay for it. And I say, okay, so what are you going to do? How have you been living missionally yourself already? Why haven't you? Well, when you learn to live missionally, then it supports you. It means serving others, helping out by Vacation Bible School, working, serving the nursing homes, do everything. Live missionally, live a life of service. Then we'll believe you when you say you want to do this. But if you're just saying, I want this great experience, then you're not following God's will for the little stuff. You're just looking for the big explosive stuff, and it's useless. It's not going to happen. And what's funny is I've had a couple of these kids that said this to me. 2 weeks later, they'd already forgotten about the mission trip because their lives weren't in order to start with. This not obeying that James says is like looking in a mirror and forgetting it. Now, from our standpoint, it looks pretty weird, but in the Jewish culture, the priest who would minister in the temple had a piece of a polished metal object that we would call a laver. And it was basically a bowl made from polished metal. They washed their faces and they were coming into the holy place because they were supposed to make sure that they were spotless before they went into the holy place. That was part of this picture of this preparation for approaching God. And if we want to approach God and have this relationship with Him, it's important that we self-examine. That's one of the things that we do a lot of times before the Lord's Supper. We kind of just spend a few moments in self-examination and say, God, I just want to remember who you are and what you've done. I remember that I don't deserve anything you've done for me. Recognize this. Do that self-examination and come before Him, because that's what we're supposed to do. If we forget how we look, we're falling into self-deception. There's a lot of Christians living in self-deception. They look at the Word of God. They realize their lives don't match it. And so what do? They stay out of the Word. There's a saying that says, sin will keep you out of the Word of God, the Word of God will keep you out of sin. And so if you have a choice to make, what you want to pursue in your life, would you like to pursue God's will for your life, or you just want to pursue a self-led life? That's the question. Those are two options we have. We have a self-led life or a God-led life, and we get to choose which one we're going to do. If you pursue it, a God-led life, you're going to need to get into the Word and absorb it. Allow God to speak to you. Listen to Him. Open your ears and allow Him to transform and conform your life to His Word. But if you want to live a self-led life, then you're going to be like that balloon, just going around the place. And that's your choice. That's the choice each one of us gets to make. I really respect Tim Tebow. Most of you know who Tim Tebow is, right? I have a friend in Ohio that was in Erie, PA. He works as an umpire and a grounds crew, and he was in a minor league stadium in Erie, PA. He got to meet Tim Tebow and get a selfie with him, which I thought was pretty cool. But I really like Tim Tebow because he's an outspoken Christian. But he also doesn't just talk about God, he actually obeys Him. He does the little acts of obedience that always has a sensitivity. He's trying to hear God. He really wants to hear God. In fact, I've read at least 3 accounts of where he's been on a plane or in an airport or on the street, and something's happened. Somebody's collapsed or they've fallen or hit in an accident, and he was there. And so he just came right to their aid, begins praying for them and ministering to them. Because he's available. His heart has been focused towards God. He's used by God in all these amazing ways. And if you're wondering why God hasn't used you, you might have to ask yourself, am I listening to Him? Is my heart conformed towards Him? Am I in His Word and allow my life to be conformed to His image? Or am I still living a self-led life? Because if you're living a self-led life, you're going to miss all those amazing divine appointments God has for you. Those amazing divine appointments that change your life and others. I mean, I would love to have Tim Tebow's testimony at the end of his life. I just love to be able to see the list of things that God used him for. He's probably not even aware of half of where God used him to touch people's lives that he didn't even aware of, because he was willing to allow God to use him. Would you like your life to be like that? I hope the answer is yes. Listening? Everybody still listening? So I'm going to ask you just to bow your heads and pray. And just make this commitment to the Lord with me. Lord God, we recognize that we get caught up in life and in ourselves. Sometimes we're doing all the talking, none of the listening. Lord, we want to hear you. Father, we would like our lives to be on course for what you have for us, the plans you have for us, plans to prosper us and not to harm us, plans for a future. Lord, we won't end up that way unless we're following you, unless we're allowing you to speak into our lives and to change us. So Lord, I'm asking for each one of us that we would commit to opening your word daily, reading your word, listening for your instruction, and then obeying in big things and small. In Jesus' name.